Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, this is Sistla Krishna. Uh, uh, Basically, I have been in the education space for several years, and we have started a company called Tooople to help. Yeah, may I request everybody to put it on mute. When you are asking a question, you can unmute. And if your bandwidth is not good, then my suggestion is come on to audio, not necessarily the video. And other thing, don't try to move your laptops or your chairs, and because that is going to disturb the others. Because nowadays the microphones are very sensitive. So I request you to just make sure that these basic housekeeping items are addressed. So just take 2 minutes and just put everything on mute for the time being. And if you, as I said, if you don't have good uh, bandwidth, just you can be on audio itself. And we are going to record this session. So in case you want to view it, we can help you to view it again. Okay? That's how it is. And I'll take around 5-10 minutes to introduce my colleague and also why we are here. And after that, Mr. Sai will take over and help you to, understand why, this new age uh, application development life cycle is critical. And that's what we are addressing today. Okay, we'll get going. As I said, our company name is Tooople. It's a Singapore-based company. We have an organization in Hyderabad. There's India operations are managed from Hyderabad, and Asia operations are managed from Singapore. So if you see that in our logo, we have three O's, and the middle O is the student, and the other two O's, one is the academia, second one is the industry. I'll just briefly talk about what's happening in the industry, and so if you see the macro picture, that the big picture, what's happening in the industry is it's quite scary because the requirement is so high, but the quality of the students who are supposed to be getting out of the campus is not able to match up with what the industry is looking at. So that is something which we together need to address. That becomes very, very important. And uh, so for that, in today's world, what we need is a digital culture. The days are gone where anything, everything like in-person classes happening, in-person support happening. All those things are fine, but it is not anymore the prime way of doing it. That's not the mainstream way of doing things because of the internet growth. Because people can work from anywhere, when colleges are very, very well spread. They have extremely good connectivity, but people are not able to really travel because travel itself has become a challenge. So culturally, I think we have to change. I'll take a minute and tell you like what was happening in 80s. If I look at in 1980, there was a real revolution of computers at the time in the education space, that is skill development space. That's the age I belong to, and it was something we needed to really. Uh, just give me a second. Okay, we are there. Sorry about it. And so that is the place where things have changed in 80s, where the skill development had to take place, and it was taking place very rapidly. And there was some private companies came in because the government was not able to manage that. At the time, the infrastructure was as short as we are thinking today. and the manpower was short. But the thing was, when you're having a change that is happening in the industry or in the world, there are going to be some, gaps. But we as stakeholders need to work around and work together to make sure those gaps are filled up. So today the jobs are changing because the industry has changed, because the technology has changed, and because the people thinking has changed, and even a lot of pressure is there in big companies to generate the revenues and profits, and tell the stakeholders all these things are happening at the same time. So, we have to face with it. We have to live with it. So we can't sit in the old age. What is happening? Thinking that okay, we'll get the campus recruitment done, and we'll call people. They'll come and do that. If you see next 12 to 24 months, you won't see that happening. All the things that's going to happen is digital. So the digital transformation, when it is happening in the recruitment, there should be a digital transformation that should happen at a source. Source is a college. Yeah? And digital gives access to opportunities for the companies to hire. So they don't look at which college is the best college in today's definition. They look at which college or how many are getting produced in the digital world, because a lot of jobs are going to be redefined. So that's going to happen. And that's the reason why I thought I should have this slide, basically the macro picture of it. So what are we doing? Why are we here? As a company, what we are trying to do is we are trying to bring in the digital culture using our pillar called Academy, where we provide a lot of content digitally using artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence helps us to create the curriculum. And then we have somebody is off the mute. Can you mute it, please? So we have projects where students can work on the projects at any time. They don't need to work on a particular schedule. Today, on the seventh semester, they start working on a project, or eighth semester. Those days you can really distribute it, because now you have possibly mentors who can help them from the industry to do that. So that's going to be a great opportunity to make sure the students are also not rushing, and they get ample time to balance their studies as well the project work. So that's the reason why we are there in the project side. And what we are trying to do is, again, on-campus recruitments are great things to happen, but also it will filter out around 80 to 90% of the students, and then what happens to them? So that can be, so it is the job of the student as well. If college wants to help them, college also should be able to send a link to a company, a set of links saying that these are the things which my students can do. And so they are able to really go for the off-campus recruitments. So for that, we have created something called e-portfolio. And that is something which updates the progress that is being made when they work with Tooople over a year or 2 years, or maybe during the project work. Their entire work can be displayed. And we have something called job matching, which will be soon introducing. So this is going to be now the session on application development. I have a wonderful, and great experienced person, Mr. Sai. He spent over 25 years in this space. He started his career as a non-IT professional. He was in core engineering, then moved to, for the IT space, and he worked on several projects, worked in India and outside. He worked on projects right from the traditional technologies when it was new at the time to the current technologies, including DevOps and you name it, the blockchain, all the technologies he has worked. And he's going to tell you what is this new age application development life cycle. What we have been studying, that is good foundation, but today it doesn't work because the things are changing, the cycles are changing. So I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Sai. He is going to take you through, and he'll have the different breaks. One more thing one more person I'd like to introduce is Mr. Rajiv. Rajiv is a colleague and our associate. He's sitting in Bangalore, And he'll be interacting with Sai to make this discussion a little more lively. And I want everybody to enjoy this session and appreciate it. There could be issues here and there, but they're there everywhere. So don't look for issues. You look for the best things that are happening, that are coming your way. And anything you want, we are available to support you, work with you. So go to you, Sai, and it's going to be a
A great session, but definitely I will attempt understand application development lifecycle as such. When we talk about ADLC, it's such a bland subject, and the timing we have chosen, which is probably post your lunch time. So it's an ideal session. So I will make all attempts to ensure that you are not falling asleep. So, and in the process, what we will try to do is, I will also try to demystify a certain terminology, especially that you keep hearing with respect to digital, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all these concepts, DevOps. So we will try to also demystify a little, though some of those topics probably do not mean have much relevance to the topic we have on hand. But the way currently technologies are converging, it soon could be, because at some point in time we may be designing applications that will have to address all of these aspects as part of the Internet of Things kind of a model, architecture model, right? So with that aside, I hope I am audible and you're able to hear me loud and clear. So without wasting any more time, let me quickly jump on to this topic of application development lifecycle, right? Now, this is not something that we have not known. See, my primary purpose of bringing this topic up is to explain one is to ensure that it brings some kind of awareness to you on this application development lifecycle. Some of it could be a repetition for some of you, but I would still request you to bear, that point. And the second point, the main idea for me to introduce any particular slide is to not only bring that awareness to you, but also to ensure that we discuss on what are the practical challenges or what is the practical experience that we have within the industry, and how do you ensure that you are able to prepare your students better to address some of these challenges when they hit the career path soon after they complete the 4-year engineering degree. So that is a major takeaway that for me that I will keep, and please ensure that if you at any point in time you would like to interrupt or you would like to ask a question or explain in more detail about any practical elements of that particular slide, especially in the context of your students, please do raise your hand and let me know. So I will make all attempts to at suitable points to interrupt myself and provide greater elaboration and meaning to whatever question you may be having. So with that said, so this is primarily the kind of agenda that I have made out for this particular session. The main objectives are to at least bring that awareness to you on how it is being done, and also related to from a contextual standpoint where we are, and with the given set of things, what are the current challenges that we have, and what is the reality, and what is this agile mode of working, And also we will dig deep into one of the fundamental ways in which Agile is being currently practiced in majority of the IT service organizations, which is the Scrum methodology. So we'll try to understand a little bit more on Scrum, and also try to reflect it in terms of how does the variability and the project risk actually, over a time sequence, how are they continuously measured, and in the burn down, how does the cone of uncertainty trend when we are talking in terms of a waterfall model versus a agile model. And then we'll also look at how do we scale this type of an arrangement, agile way of working, for larger kind of programs. And then we will go into this next stage of where we are today and what is the newer developments that we are seeing and what is the current requirement, at least on the job market side from an IT service organization standpoint. So the primary intent and major takeaway for me will be that you should at least be aware of the current skills, the technologies that are needed for your students. Two, what are the other aspects that are being looked to by the IT service organizations? Three, what are the current challenges that normally IT service companies face when they are inducting some of these newer entrants, especially engineer trainees, into the organization, and what do we see, so that you are able to better articulate and prepare your students to address some of these challenges. And in the process, hopefully, we will provide them a good career path once they join in an organization, and they can go far in that particular organization. So that's the intent for this particular session. And we will also try to keep some question answers. We'll leave some time for towards the end for a question answer kind of a discussion. Wherein, if you have some questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to keep noting them down, and then we will try to give some time towards the end or sometimes in the middle, so that it doesn't become a monotonous speech from my side, right? Now, when we say, just a minute, give me a minute. So when we say application development life cycle, what is it that we are, the first thing that comes to our mind is the classic scenario we have with respect to from the requirements through the testing life cycle. So, some of you may say, we have to bring the requirements from the requirements through the testing phase. So this is already explained so many times in the theoretical notebooks and textbooks that we have described. And it is age-old, phenomena that is doesn't require much discussion now. So we will try to, the basic fundamental phases within the life cycle still remain the same. But we will try to also understand what is the current challenge with respect to this particular model. Because if I were to relate, in 1990, when I completed my engineering and I joined an IT company, so we did not have to start with, in Hyderabad now we have so many IT companies, but during my days, all the campus was right from the JNT College of Engineering, Hyderabad, the Tooople campus. And when we completed our engineering, what we had to do is we recruited mostly by TCS. TCS was the only organization that was giving IT service jobs. We were all placed only in Chennai. We never had anything in Hyderabad. We had smaller organizations like OMC Computers, etc. in Hyderabad, which probably no longer exist now. But fundamentally, any IT service work was being done mostly from Chennai. But in those days, when we were being taken, most of the projects that were happening in the 90s were primarily around, number one, it was maintenance type of projects. And two, these are projects mostly in the Y2K arena. So there were people who were working in the Y2K side, and there were people, luckier people, like me, we fell into the maintenance side. And the majority of the times we were only, doing incremental portions of the actual delivery cycle. So we never understood, we never got any opportunity to work on requirements analysis or to a large extent even the high level design used to be done from the on-site teams, and then we used to do the low level design, and then we do the code unit test, and then move into the subsequent phases of the software delivery lifecycle. So nothing has changed since, but only thing that has happened is post 2000, around 2000 onwards, post the Y2K era, things have started falling in place, and we started getting more development work actually in India. And then we started, seeing that gradually, things were being done more at a design level, and the code unit test was being done here. And most of the times, the user acceptance test was still being conducted by, the customer at on-site. And gradually, over a period of time, now we have come to a stage where we are even able to do the requirement analysis here. And what has helped us in the process is to do this kind of requirement analysis is the domain understanding. Now, when I come to domain, so this is one skill, because not only are IT service resources are not only expected to have technology skills, but they should be good at a domain. And we will also understand, why do we need to be good in the domain? Is because we are now trying to provide solutions. Let's say I work for a banking and financial services or insurance customer. I will have to understand their business so that I'm able to offer them technology solutions to address their business problems. So until the time we had the requirements or the domain expertise, India was not considered as a place for doing the requirements work. So then gradually, 2010 onwards, we started seeing more maturity emerging in the IT service organizations, and greater emphasis was laid on domain understanding. So this is something, that probably during the college days, at least people will have to be introduced to some of the basic concepts of what is a core banking solution, what is a financial services organization, life cycle is. What is an insurance life cycle, for an insurance cover that we may take, or a policy that we may take. These are not anything new, because business is executed in the same fashion whether it is in US or in India. So the business is very simple and easy to understand, and we tend to make it more complex, through our technology solutions. But otherwise, business is very simple, not very complex, and business is conducted in the same way in US as compared to India. The only difference is insurance, if you were to take, or the regulation is more stringent in US compared to India. Here we may have regulations, but the implementation or the practical application of it is lax. So we do not really understand some of those aspects. But if you were to see the actual insurance books of India, in Indian context as well, they're both the same. They've been, everybody does a copy paste, whether it's from Microsoft Word or from, textbook to this book, right? So, but bottom line is, what I'm trying to stress here is that, you should also probably encourage, I'm not sure, if you will have the wherewithal to, within the colleges, to get that type of domain understanding. But this is not something that is, unreachable at this point in time, given the digital revolution that we are having. And your students, our next generation definitely is probably more prepared to use some of these latest technologies, especially YouTube. Before they were to go, they could always look at something about financial services, something about insurance, something about telecom, something about manufacturing. So let them, it's not that they don't need to really become experts in that, but at least they should have basic awareness of how the business is conducted. So that helps them to actually function in requirement analyst kind of roles. Because this is something that we see, once a resource comes into the project, they'll be asking us, sir, I want to be a BA, or a business analyst. And typically, the way it is done here is, in India at least, that we are following is, most of the time, the business analyst is a person that is recruited from an MBA, from a management institute. So we typically put them in business analyst roles, thinking that he has already done something about management. But technically speaking, it doesn't preclude actually an engineer or an MCA to do a business analyst role. Only aspect that is required is one, good amount of maturity, to a good understanding of the business that they want to operate in. And now, what is changing actually, in this? Because when we started, as I mentioned, we started with maintenance projects, but gradually we started to run projects, wherein but from a requirement standpoint, what we used to see earlier, right, in the 90s and even probably before 2010, what we used to see, gradually things have started changing drastically in the last 3 to 4 years. But until at least about 2014, 2015, if I were to use. So majority of the times we had time in our hand. What I mean by time is that a project once conceived, there was enough ample time for a customer to actually build it and then design, build, test, and then release it to production. Because there were people who are still able to wait. And in the last 3 to 4 years, the appetite to wait has deteriorated drastically. And in the digital age, people want the solutions in the next minute, by the next hour. So in the process, the delivery methodology also had to undergo a lot of transformation in order to be in a position to meet that kind of a demand. So, but from your standpoint, okay, why does it, okay, that's fine, but what is the major takeaway for me, So now let's try to understand, typically, in an IT service organizations, where does actually the requirement for an associate comes in? So why do they have to come to the market and to come to the colleges and recruit people? Typically, what are the kind of roles that they have? Or what type of projects do they do? So we'll try to address that. That's one point of interest for college professors like yourselves. So that, again, the intent is not to just to be aware, with that knowledge of being aware that these are the type of areas that they're going to be put into, you are able to better educate your teams, your students, to be motivated enough to fall in line with respect to the requirements that they're going to be put into, and to also to expose them to the skills that will be needed so that they are able to do a better job in wherever they are put. And 3, this will also help them to a large extent in crossing the barrier. Whenever IT service organizations come to your campuses, and when you are able to talk about skills of this nature that you are already possessing, then automatically there will be greater acceptance from the IT service organizations to come to such organizations. So in the process, this is also going to help immensely, the college, to stand out in terms of campus requirements, right? Now, typically, what are the requirements that we see in an IT service organization? Number one, we see one is the projects which are basically development and development projects, and where there is some kind of requirement that exists from the customers, and it is probably going to be an end-to-end kind of a development project. And then 2, this is one area which is almost like a bread and butter for majority of the IT service organizations. Majority of our business is in this area called as service management and then testing services. So let us try to understand what is service management. Once the developed product is there, it is released into the market, then somebody has to do the servicing for that particular application. And that is referred to as the service management. It is a continuous evolution of that particular product during the course of its life cycle. And in order to service the customers, there could be issues, there could be problems, or there could be newer features that may be required in the particular application. All of this is taken care by an organization within an IT services organization called as a service management team. And then obviously the testing services. We will also try to understand, why there is so much of demand for testing services, and what is the need, and what type of testing services are required from a skill standpoint. What is the demand like? We will also try to, over the course of this particular presentation, I would like to also highlight some of those points so that they are helpful for you to, again, motivate and educate your students to at least, get competent about some of those skills. So again, these are some of the other major takeaways that I'll try to keep for yourselves, so that at the end of this session, I hope I can kind of demystify some of these aspects to you, and to also bring that awareness to you on the newer delivery models and why they are doing what they are doing. And 3, how do we survive in such a market? And 4, how do we, get our colleges in the top ranks of an IT services, recruitment drive? So we'll also try to discuss on how do we prepare your students for that aspect. But typically, when we started, this is how we were executing projects. And projects initially, in the 90s, we used to execute mostly mainframe or mid-range S400 type of projects. And in those days, there used to be technologies like COBOL and CSCS, DB2. These were some of the skills that were being used. And now we try to demystify. I just wanted to demystify one particular aspect that continues to, be stressed in most of the discussions that I have seen is about digital. And so were we not doing anything digital earlier? So I would like to demystify that aspect. It was all being done earlier as well. The digital aspect is nothing but a solution that is catering to the needs of a user. And so the digital aspect includes user experience, along with the front end that they see, and the interactions that they have with the rest of the organization using that particular application. So in the olden days, if I were to categorize, digital used to be probably CICS-based screens. STICS is what we used to call in those days. CICS-based screens, which was the online aspect of that particular application, which was visible to the user to interact with the machine to do some of his, applications or to fill up some of his forms. So he was using something like a user interface screen. And apart from that, how do you ensure that the user experience is managed and contained in the various gadgets that the person is using? So that is something that new that has come up over the last 3-4 years. The demand for a particular solution to be made available in the same, with the same look and feel in various modes of communication medium that we use currently, like it could be a tab, it could be my iPhone, it could be my laptop, or it could be something else, my GPU, that I'm running. So the look and feel should be the same. So the digital experience aspect is something that is new, but digital is not an alien term. It was being done before as well. And digital in the current context includes certain aspects of user experience also that have been added in. And earlier, we used to develop, in 2000 to 2010 at least, we used to do a lot of projects in Microsoft and .NET. And we used to do a lot of screens in ASP.NET or, in VB.NET, in VB 6.0 at the point in time in 2000s, early 2000s, we were doing in VB 6. And so some of those also had, some of the user interface elements. So the digital was there. Now the organizations, what they have done is all the activities that we are doing mostly in the user interface and related areas of the application, they have now segmented that as a digital. So that is what we see now. Organizations suddenly earlier, if they were claiming that I was doing so much of business in EDM, now they may be saying half of it is in digital experience and rest is in something else, right? So that is something that we need to understand. So it is there. But the skill requirements are changing, and we will see also why are the skill requirements changing. It's fundamental change is happening for what reason. Now, as we discussed, there used to be time earlier. We used to have time, and so an organization did have the time to bring up its requirement, and then it had the time and wherewithal and the money to execute it over a period of time and then release it into the market, because the customers were waiting at that point in time. Now, customers are no longer waiting. So if I'm not able to offer, it is a business lost for that customer. There is somebody else who is ready to do it in the same time frame. So the user will immediately jump on. If something is not available for me in Flipkart, immediately I'll go to Amazon or do something else. So that is how the customers, at least the patience levels are. So given that context, it is impossible to get the requirements in such a context. When the user base is changing, user requirements or user's mindset is changing so rapidly, then it is very difficult for us to get all the requirements at the same time. Because while I'm developing my project, some of the users, there could be some some of the millennials suddenly they want something else, something new, that needs to happen in a second. So earlier the screen was being displayed to me in for 10 seconds. People were waiting. Now it should be in 1 second. Otherwise, the person leaves a particular side and moves over. So the functional and the non-functional aspects of the requirements are changing continuously. So a waterfall kind of a project wherein you have requirements, then you do the design, then you do the coding, then you do the testing, is no longer going to work, because by the time the project is complete, this project may not be required. And from a business standpoint, the customer is going to fail, because if you were to lose his customers, then they will cease to be in business. So it is a reality that now that we have to understand at the beginning of the project, the requirements are never 100% known. It's bound to happen that you're going to get requirements along the way. So in a waterfall type of a methodology, which is very rigid, making changes, it had to go through a long, lengthy change control process that we used to call, wherein it had to go to a change control board, it needs to be approved, somebody needs to do a planning estimate for it, get the cost approved, and all of these need to happen before even we attempt to do the change. And unfortunately, there's not that much time now in the people's hands. So same is the case with IT service organizations. Though they had to improve, they had to improvise, they had to innovate, and this is how they are doing right now. So that now ADLC, the application development lifecycle, to a large extent now is mostly happening in an iterative fashion. Because though there are still some pockets of projects being still executed in waterfall methodology, those are predominantly monolithic applications that have been developed over the years and for which requirements do not change. Those are the ones typically being attempted, but more and more organizations are now discouraging from going into the waterfall approach. And we see majority of the projects, almost 70 to 80%, that is 70 to 80% now. That is the voice better now? I see a message saying that voice is not clear. Is the voice clear now? Could you just confirm, please? It's clear to me. Okay, thank you. So that's something, that fundamental aspect of change that is happening. And whatever requirements are gathered or guaranteed to change, we have really understood that the user base or the customer requirements are evolving on a day-to-day basis now. So today he may be wanting this facility to be made available, and tomorrow suddenly he may say, no, I want even, if I were to take a bank, it could be that I have to do it from anywhere. I can do a transaction, and tomorrow my requirement could be that even the cash has to be deposited at my home. There could be some new requirements of that nature, but bottom line is the requirements that we have started with are guaranteed to change. That's another fundamental reality that we have to understand. And in the earlier context, when we used to do our projects in the 90s, whenever a requirement changed, immediately we used to tell the customer, no, this is not possible. We used to directly tell them on their face in the call, that this is not possible, I cannot be doing this. Then, customer, he'll be shouting at us, yes, sir, no, my project, budgeted and cost and timelines do not, so if you were to do this, please bring it through a change control process, and I will have to go through a set process. And this is obviously going to take time. And obviously business partners were never happy with that. And they were at least having, they had those patience levels at that point in time, because their customers did not demand these things in such a fast fashion. But now things are different. Now the business users, if they are not able to meet their customer demands, and the business will cease to exist. And the person who's giving us the business will cease to exist. So we have to now innovate. And we are not supposed to be fearful of a change. So this is something that we will have to educate the student, because what we see generally, again, some terminology that I'll be using, that we should be clear about is is about the people that we normally take into in the college grads that we take. We normally go through some kind of a training program for about 3 to 6 months max, and after that they are put into the college. And they're starting the designation usually is a software engineer training. So I'll be referring to them as software engineer training. And so the challenge that we see normally with software engineer training is, number one, they are always interested mostly in, I want to take up development projects. And two, when even they are putting into the development projects, they get very quickly demotivated or demoralized when they start seeing that they have to do a lot of rework. Why is there a rework? Because the requirement has changed. So they tend to get very demoralized. But now they have to understand that this is the reality. This is the way the delivery model is to work. And we have to be in business. This is the way we have to work. And it is not for us to get demoralized. We have to understand it from the bigger picture context of why it is changing and what is changing and why it is changing. And my purpose of telling you all this far has been to educate your students that this is the new reality and this is how they have to work whenever they approach the problem. And two, we'll also talk about the term that I mentioned about, especially about so now all this is going to mean that there probably could be additional time and money. So though this is not accepted, money is accepted, but not the time. I'm not seeing a place where because of a change we have to change. Because the customers are very, very strict nowadays. Even if there is a change, they will expect us to crash the schedule. What I mean by crashing is to add additional resources and get it done within the same period of time. They're okay to pay the additional money, but to a large extent, they're not okay to change the dates. So it is bound to be stressful because of that. So this is something that they will have to also understand. And it is not anything that is new. Because what we have to understand is this is the requirement of the current generation. That is the reason why the businesses are operating the way they are operating. So we have to at least educate our students to say that, because all of you are actually have such demands that things have to happen by the hour or things have to change by the hour. So as a result, the IT service delivery also has to change in the same manner. The project execution has to happen in the same manner. So that's what you will have to probably educate your teams, because we see that people tend to get very quickly demotivated. And the second aspect that I wanted to demystify here is there are not so many development projects that are running here. So we don't do all the development projects in the world. So people, the major bread and butter that we get is the maintenance, service management, and testing services is one area where almost 60 to 70% of our business lies. And this is also like an annuity business. This is because this is an application servicing operation will be continuously, moving, from year to year. It is not something like a project, because a project will have a quick, they have a start and they also have an end. And people will have to understand, earlier if I was doing a waterfall project, it used to run for about 2-3 years also in some cases. I've executed some of my projects in waterfall model. I've executed them for about 3 years of a large program. We did for we have banking, financial services, and insurance customer in US, one of the US insurance major. And it ran for 3 years. And but now the projects are going to be also of shorter duration. So there is more the tendency of a person finding a project today, and suddenly after 1 month or 2 months, he may be coming back on the bench. So it is not for the associate to get demotivated or demoralized. What they need to focus on, what they need to concentrate on, is what are the skills that he can learn during that intervening period, so that he's able to better place himself whenever the new project starts. So that's something that I request the college professors also to keep educating their students with. So this used to work earlier, so I know what I said, but that was 6 months ago. It used to work that way, in the 90s, but no longer the case. And one more classic example of what used to happen, because in waterfall days, it was possible that somebody started, with the idea to build a Charminar, but instead we built a Taj Mahal. That was possible because the business validation aspect was only happening towards the end. And as a result, it was possible that, because the testing phase normally comes towards the end, as you're all aware and probably more knowledgeable about, and some of your PhDs in your respective fields. So you probably have more knowledge than I. But I've seen projects, in the 90s and 2000s while I was in the US, I used to see projects being scrapped during the testing phase because they have discovered that the project is not meeting the requirement of the customer, because the requirement was something and somebody else thought something else. So looking at, and we will also try to understand why is it so, how can that happen. We will try to understand why it can happen, because fundamentally when you resolve to look at documentation and start your design and development, things can be interpreted in multiple ways. And it is always possible that somebody could make assumptions also along the way, which are wrong assumptions. And finally, in the end, the product may not be meeting the customer expectations. And nobody has that much time and patience, nor willingness to splurge money in the current context. And so the only way that is possible is that a validation from business has to happen on a continuous basis. Has to happen, if not every week, at least 2 weeks once, it needs to happen. And that is possible using an agile methodology. Whereas in the waterfall methodology, most of the times, the business validation used to happen in the testing phase. And two, there used to be a lot of time availability on everybody's end, at everybody's end. And as a result, things were possible then, but no longer now. And again, heavyweight process, and a lot of emphasis was on planning and documentation. We used to see almost projects spending close to about 25% of their time also in planning. And planning is and at the end of it, they will produce tons of MS project or files of project schedules, the communication plan, the risk management plan, all of those which are good, but there used to be greater emphasis on documentation. And again, how many of that documentation have we referred after the project is done? I would say it's not much. So from value add standpoint, the return on investment on the documentation probably is a sheer waste. So considering that the agile methodology specifies is less strenuous on the documentation part, but at the same time it requires you to document. The documentation instead could happen as comments within your code. That's definitely a place a developer will actually look at, or even a tester could look at, to see what is this particular piece of code doing actually. So that could be probably a better place to do the documentation. It's probably one of the best practices, right? Probably it is one of the best practices. Now, so basically, we have understood the approach of the waterfall methodology is highly risky and costly, and obviously lesser efficient because it is not able to handle change, right? And it is not that I'm not really saying that all the projects we did were humbug, because I myself have executed and have received many awards for being the best project manager at my company. So there have been successes. That's the reason why we are here where we are, because companies outside the country are still believing and trusting India because we have done a good job as far. Now, but we have to understand the business reality now is a little different. So waterfall methodology may not be the most appropriate. It is not that I'm not saying that there are no longer waterfall methodology projects. There are a lot of projects still being executed in waterfall. And but the percentage of that has come down drastically. It's not probably about 30%, I would say. 70% of the projects from now in IT service organizations mostly are agile knowledge. Again, some of it we have also discussed and understood to a large extent, but this is the current context. Right. So obviously, one of the major ones that you will have to focus on is this element of.
Hello, Saigaru. If I may interrupt you, I wanted to check if you can give us a little insight into how let's say waterfall versus agile has been used in different industries. Earlier in the presentation, you had given us a perspective on how requirements gathering has changed over the 90s versus 2000s versus before 2010. So, I mean, for example, I can think of banking being a domain where waterfall would traditionally have been applied in a lot of projects in the early 90s, etc. So if you can give from your experience some perspective on how various industries or various domains have tried and tested these methodologies and why everyone's moved towards agile, that would be great.
Yeah, sure, Rajiv. Thanks for keeping me on course, right? Now, again, we will try to address some of these aspects when we talk about the agile methodology, right? And when I go do a deep dive, I will try to focus on some of the projects, on how it is done, and how it is being done now. But bottom line, I think I have made sufficient case for at least for all of you to be aware or to bring to your understanding of why the IT service organizations have started embracing agile methodology. And so I believe I've built up sufficient case for that. Now, given that, let's try to look at. So again, this is one one of the classic case wherein we had to scrap projects. We discover a problem when we hit 25%, which is the testing phase, which is almost towards the end. And now again, given these challenges, organizations have decided to, they were grappling with how do they address this kind of situation. So there are multiple methodologies that were floated. We did something called as an iterative development, wherein after we get some portions of the requirement, we used to start. It used to be still a waterfall, but waterfall in smaller increments. That is how it used to be. And then gradually things solidified further, and people started embracing agile more. And so the agile manifesto also, if you were to understand, the emphasis is more around individuals and interactions, and working software versus a comprehensive documentation, collaboration versus contract negotiations, and responding to change or following a plan. Now here I would like to focus on this aspect, not just to bring the awareness to you about agile, I'm sure you are aware, but of what skills are demanded because of these reasons. Now here the emphasis is more around, it's not like that if I have a stalwart that I can run the show. Now I have to work in the requirement is going to be developed in smaller bits. As a result, there will be multiple teams that will be working on this project. And each of this team will have to do a lot more collaboration than they were doing earlier. And two, they should be more expressive, because unless the teams are able to express their viewpoint or their understanding of the requirements, there is no way the other party will understand what this person is saying or doing. And as a result, there is more emphasis on the communication aspect to the collaboration aspect. And when I say communication, again, please do not get me wrong here. I'm not saying that we have to be experts in English. English is not our native language, and everybody understands that. And so we are not supposed to be a native speaker, so nobody is expecting that. What I mean by communication is the ability to express. Even if it's in broken English, the person is able to express his opinion or his point of view, then that kind of attitude is going to work. But if the person keeps himself silent because he does not have English skills or he does not know how to explain his point of view, then that type of a model may not work. Because there is more emphasis on collaboration, more emphasis on explaining, talking to, validating with the business user. Because in an increment, how is this problem of the point that Rajiv was also made, is earlier we used to have requirements that was handed off to the development team, and then the development team used to run with it. And at the time testing phase comes, only at the start of UAT is when again the business person comes back into the picture and he or she used to do the testing. That is how it used to happen in the waterfall world. Now, the requirement as such is going to be co-owned in my team. In my team, I'm going to have a partner from the business as well, who's going to work with the developer, who's going to work with the tester, and together they are all going to develop this particular feature of the requirement. And obviously, as a result, we understood, okay, the requirement is not 100% frozen. It is going to evolve during the course of this small feature development. So as a result, the person, the developer, tester, they have to express their understanding of what is required. And then business user probably could refine his requirement further, depending on how the developer is trying to interpret. And as a result, the feature that is going to come is something that is acceptable to the business already. So the validation happens as part of the execution itself. So my request to the professors here is to emphasize on the aspect of communication, and do not mistake communication to be English speaking skills. Everybody understands it's not a native language. As long as, you see, companies are willing to live with technical skills. If the person is little poor on communication, they can still live with it. But if the person cannot express himself, then companies may not be fine with that, because they will fail. Because now an individual star may not be able to complete the project, because these are on smaller increments, and the star will have to work along with the team in the collaborative mode. That he will have to. So the teamwork and communication aspects are what highly stressed. And so third thing is the aspect of change, which is something constant. And fourth element is the shorter nature of the duration of this type of projects. These are four learnings that the students will have to be at least sensitized to, so that they are able to really understand who they can express. That is what you should also encourage in your during your own lectures, is to let them express, even though they may not have this English capability, but let them express their point of view. That is what is important here, if they have to be successful. Now, we'll also just try to, I just wanted to give an example of how a document could be, a simple sentence could be viewed once it is documented, depending on where you are stressing, which word you are stressing. So a sentence like, I didn't say she took the money, if that is my requirement, let's say, is documented somewhere, and I get this as my requirement. And myself, I may just say, I didn't say she took the money. So I'm emphasizing on the word I. So somebody could interpret this as, I didn't say it. Or somebody may be reading this sentence as, I didn't say she took the money. So, so then that person will be interpreting it as, I said something else. I didn't say she took the money. He is stressing on the word say. And then somebody else could be reading the same sentence, and he or she may be stressing on the word she. I didn't say she took the money, is how they probably will interpret it. And so in their sense, the requirement is, I didn't say she took the money. That means somebody else might have taken the money, but not she. And so, somebody else may read the same requirement and say, I didn't say she took the money. So she did something, but she didn't take the money. That's what I'm inferring it as. And so she spent it instead. And somebody else may read the same requirement and say, I didn't say she took the money. And then that person may think, oh, okay, she didn't take the money, but she did something else. So words are very slippery. So if somebody were to take this through design, develop or test, and then go into production, then obviously it's not going to meet. You will have 6 or 7 variants of the product, and that will not. Companies do not have neither the patience nor the appetite nor the wherewithal to withstand that type of surprises. So all the more reason why they should be more agile, and all the more reason why you should prepare your students to be more agile. And again, one more the lighter note, right? Again, one more aspect that we have to stress with the students is this aspect of what we have seen is majority of the cases, sometimes it is probably because of their lack of capability to express, they tend to make assumptions. And if I cannot express what assumption I have made, then the development obviously is going to be sloppy or not meeting the requirement. So the aspect that we have to stress to the students will be never make any assumptions about assumptions. No assumption at all. So if they have not understood something, please tell. Sir, how is this done? Or this is the easier solution for such cases would be explain. Sir, this is what I have understood from the requirement. Is that correct? Or is there some change that I need to do? Better to do, don't assume anything. This is a fundamental aspect, fundamental learning that you have to tell. Because for a period of time, obviously, could be probably with the nuclear families and smaller size of the families, there is greater pampering also happening for the parents. As a result, our children now tend to think some things were granted or some things are assumed. That is how they're going to happen. But in the reality, with the parents it could be okay, but not in the project where assumptions could prove very costly. So, so in the agile world, so in the waterfall world, if an assumption is made, then it's going to be realized only towards the end. But in the agile world, at least we have some. But even there, at least from a success standpoint, such developers or testers could face challenges in terms of their career path. They were to fail. And one important reason why people tend to fail is because they have made wrong assumptions. That is what we discovered as an after fact. And I believe that's a very strong learning that needs to happen there in the colleges. Now, having built sufficient case for agile way of working, so I believe now all of you are also strong proponents of working in the agile way. I just wanted to do a deep dive clearly into only one aspect, because agile again has many variants. But we will try to focus on one of the more popular ones, which is Scrum. Another very popular aspect of agile has been the lean and Kanban methods. But maybe we will save that for a future day. If there is a need and if you all see a need. But let's now try to do a small deep dive into Scrum and understand how it gets executed, so that you can see what are the takeaways for the students, and then you can emphasize those aspects to your students. So that's the intent. Again, I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to say that I'm not advocating that all of you do not know. That's the reason I'm saying. Not never that. And again, one more motivation for you on where organizations are headed. And now it is like a catch-up game. So, all of you probably are aware of some of the statistics. Some of the organizations that used to be in the top 5 back in the 70s no longer exist. They no longer exist. They're not even in the top 100. So, organizations that are nimble, very agile, can quickly adjust, make fast deployments are the ones that are going to survive in the future. And not only just deploy, but deploy intelligently. Those are the ones that are going to survive. All the more reason, why waterfall type of mindset will not work going forward. This actually is a different story. This particular slide is actually a different story. I would probably focus on that towards the end. When I briefly also express one of the newer concepts that is now kicked in, and which is really revolutionizing and more of industrialization that is being looked into, which is very important as well. Because the application development life cycle as such is almost dead. Now it is almost application life cycle management. That is, it doesn't end with development. It also has to be managed during its life cycle. That is the maintenance part. And also it has to be involved in the process. That's the enhancement side. So we will try to discuss that and what are the challenges with the current models, and also we'll try to understand that going forward. I hope the pace thus far has been okay. And is there any question, or should I go much faster, or am I going very slow? I mean, any comments, quick comments before I move to the next stage? Rajiv, anything that you would like to? Are there any kind of questions at this point in time? All of you have been silent. I hope I have not put you to sleep. You cannot take credit for that, definitely. Krishna here will fry me. Yeah, if you could unmute yourself and please ask that question, please. Hello. Is there a question, or do you want me to keep moving? I have unmuted all of you, so in case you happen to have any questions, kindly shoot. All of you have been unmuted. Aparna, any question from your side, Aparna?
None, sir. Thank you.
Or Dr. Sangeeta? Mandakini Reddy, any questions, ma'am? Nag, how about you? Any questions from you, Nag?
Sorry, Sai Garu. This is Rajiv. I was speaking on mute all this while.
Yeah, not a problem. I'm just trying to see questions.
So, I mean, this is going to be a very informative slide about the status of the industry at this point. I would be kind of curious to know what the participants to the session would have guessed if we had not thrown up this slide before. So let me quickly shoot up a poll question, and I would be interested to know, I would request all the participants to participate. Thanks.
Right, okay. Ramya, any questions from your side, ma'am? Ramya Parchuri, no questions? Srinivas or Sudhir Kumar, anything from your side? Okay.
Yeah, so from my side, there are no questions, sir.
Okay. Is the pace okay, or do you want me to slow down, or should I go faster?
Yeah, right now it is moderate, sir.
Okay, moderate means I can go fast is what you are indicating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you. So let me then quickly move on. So this is how typically a Scrum model works. And see, there was a question earlier, that Rajiv mentioned as to how the Scrum actually happens. How is the requirements actually done? So the requirements are not, say earlier we used to have a situation where requirements are all being documented ahead of time. And there used to be, let me see if I can mute everybody there, because I hear some noise now. Mute all. So I'm muting all of you, but I'm still allowing you to unmute yourselves in case you happen to have a question. Okay. Now, quickly, let me quickly jump on to how the Scrum works and the specific question around requirements, how it is done. So earlier we used to have the case where in Agile, where in Waterfall, we used to have all the requirements were being done in huge documentation. It could be in the form of Word documents, or sometimes in the form of use cases as well. Again, it used to be lengthy Word documents. But now the documents are primarily referred to in the feature space, again, use cases or user story cards. And they're referred to as part of product backlog. You can visualize that as a simple column and row structure, tabular structure, and each feature will be forming part of the product backlog. And the product backlog is basically is owned by the product owner or the business person, who is the owner for that. And he or she then will try to prioritize them based on their business value and the time period that he or she has for executing it and getting it into production. So that's how the sequencing happens, and then it gets into. But as I mentioned, if some of the new resources, especially the software engineer trainees, they aspire to get into business analyst space. Business analyst is the one that works very closely with the product owner, and he or she again will be participating in each of these sprint meetings. So if they are aspiring to be in that, they have to definitely have the domain skills. So that is one area definitely I'll focus. And two, that you have to tell your students to focus on. And two, once the Scrum starts, as I mentioned, the business analyst will also be part of the Scrum team, along with the developer, tester, and Scrum master. And then all of them together will have to make the commitment with respect to achieving whatever they are saying they're going to achieve. Scrum could be, a Scrum is almost like a small mini project. And a mini project is going to be anywhere between 1 to 4 weeks. Typically, I have seen to a large extent, most of the Scrums happen for about 2 weeks, because 1 week sometimes is a too short a duration, but I've seen, occasionally I've seen sprints also for, especially in the e-commerce space, in the retail segment. We generally see 1 week sprints. A sprint is going to be a place wherein the developer, the business analyst, all of them will converge, and together they have to make a commitment of how many story cards they're going to accept, and in 1 week's time, how many they can execute and deliver. This is that the sprint backlog is prepared, and the sprint backlog is taken for a sprint, and it runs for about 1 to 4 weeks. And the project manager in the waterfall world, in a crude sense, I'm not going to say that he's a 100% replacement, but Scrum Master is the one who gets to manage the project during the course of that particular sprint. And again, Scrum Master is not like a boss, he's more like a servant leader, is how I would put it as. So that is how a Scrum Master is. And how is the project tracked? There's something we use called as burn down charts, which basically depicts the manner in which, in a time sequenced manner, in a time boxed manner, how the requirements are being built, or the features that have been accepted for the sprint, at least getting delivered for testing, etc. And this is how it happens. And it's again, the emphasis on the aspect of the communication again comes into play. And second is the collaboration. So ability to work in a team, that is a must. And so if somebody has attitude issues, then they're going to be a failure once they enter into an IT organization. So they have to make sure that they can work in a team. And two, they are able to communicate, and as you communicate, express themselves in whatever broken English, if that is what is a skill level currently. Obviously, they're going to improve over a period of time. And that's not a must-have. I would say technology definitely is a must-have. Attitude is double must-have. And so daily, there is going to be something called as a daily Scrum meeting. That is called as a stand-up meeting. Typically, we call it a stand-up to ensure that it is only staying for about 10-15 minutes max. And they just have to tell what they did yesterday, what they're going to do today, and are there any obstacles for them to do their work today. So, and the Scrum Master's job is to ensure that those obstacles are removed and ensure that everything is delivered as per the commitment. This is how typically the sprint is run. And a sprint review is where it gets tested. So again, it has to be a demonstration being done by the developer, tester, and the business analyst together. All the more again reason why the teamwork and the communication aspects are required definitely. And we will also try to focus, at some point I will try to focus on the technology skills that will be needed, because this will be one other important point which you should prepare, because now there seems to be a gradual shift. At one point in time, we used to encourage a lot of specialization. So as a result, when I started, we used to do end-to-end service. That is, I used to be I used to do the developer, I used to be a tester, I used to take it into production also, release management. For a period of time, in 2000, we also became very intelligent, and we started advocating to the customers. They remain, their requirements are the same, but we went to them and told them, no, everything has to be specialized. You need to have a separate testing services organization that is doing it outside of the developer. And then you should have a developer. And again, development also is comprising of many parts. The first is the front end, which is basically the user interface part. And then you have a middle tier and the back tier, which are requiring the technology components also. Then we specialized it in that fashion. So we used to have requirements, especially for just the UI part. But I used to have requirements for ASP, or I used to have requirements for JavaScript. Those are the requirements. And then for doing the middle tier and the back end, I used to have requirements for a J2E resource. For in the .NET world, I used to have C# or VB.NET, and then C# and complex skills, right? DCOM skills. Now, and so we segmented it. But now gradually things are again converging. As a result, again, why are they converging? Again, because of the changing demands and the digital nature of the projects, wherein the experience aspect is coming into play, and things are being done in a more loose coupled fashion. So the features that they're getting developed, the requirements now are for a developer to be doing all activities. So there is more emphasis now on full stack development skills. What I mean by full stack, if I were to take, let's say, I were to use Java, example. So I would say, earlier if I had front-end developers only, I used to look for UI developers, HTML and CSS in JavaScript or VBScript, one of those, right? And but now, and then used to be services-based resources. I used to take people who have a good DCOM related experience, who are basically very good in C#, etc. But now the requirements have converged, that a developer is being expected to have all the skills, and including testing in some cases. So now gradually even testing is also getting, and why is it getting done in that fashion is because the testing aspects are being more automated now. And hitherto we used to have a lot of requirement for manual testers. Majority of the testing activity we used to do, we used to have roles like test coordinators and then test designers and then test case executioners. Test case designers are the one who is to see the actual functional requirement and then develop their test cases. And then test executioner will only take that manual test case and execute it on the keyboard, given the test steps from the designer. But now things are converging, wherein the tester is expected to write himself, he has to do the test cases as well as execute it. And majority of the cases, those test cases are to be automated in nature. So as a result, the person will also have to have development skills. And one of the very popular tools that is being used now, Quality Center is one, and then second is Selenium WebDriver. WebDriver Selenium is one more popular tool. I've also seen Cucumber being employed for some of the testing related activities, along with in combination with Selenium. Okay. Now, so from a full stack standpoint, so that's the requirement, and so and there is also need nowadays, as we see progressive web apps being developed. I see more also requirement for people who have all these skills. Apart from the front-end skills, the developers will also have RESTful web services capabilities. So REST is something that they will also have to be prepared with. And I would encourage that teams should not just do specialization, they should develop all-round capabilities so that they are more employable in the IT companies. And again, I don't want to, I think we have emphasized on this point very much. So again, how the requirement gets force ranked and the functionality gets force ranked, and how the whole activity happens from the sprint planning to retrospective. So one more thing that happens as part of sprint, which is very important, is which was an aspect that has not been focused as much, is the aspect of learning and learning from our mistakes. and also understanding best practices. So one of the fundamental aspect in Scrum is, some of the ceremonies are kept in that fashion that a sprint retrospective is supposed to be conducted at the end of every sprint. And sprint, as I mentioned, is like a mini project. And in the sprint retrospective, it is basically for the teams to go over what went right and what did not go right, and what is the learning, so that that can be snowballed to the other members of the development teams as well. And again, the reason why people have to collaborate, so that they're able to understand the best practices of the learnings from the remaining teams, is one more aspect that comes into play here. And again, PBI, product backlog item, is what it is, and sprint. I think we have hit on this already. And again, if you were to see how this whole aspect is related to the bigger picture view. One other aspect, I think, very good aspect that comes to my mind is I see that there is always a tunnel vision. That is when software engineers tend to focus on only their work aspect. And it is important for them to understand the bigger picture view of why they are doing what they are doing. And they are all within their rights to question and understand the bigger picture view as well, so that they are able to better appreciate what they are doing. And in the process, by understanding the bigger picture, they may be able to offer better solution also to the features that they are working on developing. But overall, if you were to see, the smaller increments slowly get added up, and then they become the iteration, and then it becomes a release, and the whole release will become your product, and multiple such products or applications become your portfolio. And the portfolio as such is the evolution that is coming down from the actual strategy of the organization. So, but this is how all of them are kind of related. And I don't want to stress more on the technical aspects of this sprint, because that's not the intent. I think all of you probably will get bored if I start talking about these aspects. But again, how is it tracked? One aspect, let me just take some water, please. Pardon me for a minute. So again, how is this project executed, and how is it tracked? Could be a question. So this is what happens, and what are the skills required for a Scrum Master? I would say definitely he has to have a good development background, could be a testing background as well. But apart from that, good knowledge of the business and also understanding the bigger picture view, certain level of maturity before he or she can become a Scrum Master. So I will not say that the software engineer training is going to directly play, it's not going to happen. So, but the skills they can definitely play, or they should improve their domain skills. Two, they can work on their technology skills. And the technology now, as I mentioned, the full stack demand is what is going to be driving us going forward. So I would encourage that the people who are focusing on the development side focus on the full stack development. That is not just the UI part, and then also on the UI side, HTML5, CSS, JavaScript. These are very popular. And then you have the backend, it could be C# if you are going into the .NET side, and it could be J2EE if you are going on the Java side, React.js, Node.js. Some of these aspects could be the variants if you were to choose. But predominantly, if you were to understand our IT service work, as I mentioned, 60 to 70% of it mostly is maintenance activity, and about 30 to 40% is the development. And majority of the development again is segmented into J2E technologies and then .NET technologies. Currently, the spread, the balance is tipped towards the J2E side, and we see more demand for J2E technologies compared to .NET. But again, there are some large organizations that still use .NET to a large extent. And cloud hosting, majority of the services are becoming virtual in nature. So that is another aspect that people will have to be used to, and will have to all the aspects of development. And given the distributed delivery model, one more aspect that comes into play with respect to the communication and collaboration will be that your teams may be spread out in multiple parts of the world. And there should be a way that you can collaborate with them. When I say collaborate, it's not about just talking to them, but how you can display your work to them, how they can display their work to you. How do you do walkthroughs, code walkthroughs to them, and the same way from their side? How do they do requirement walkthrough from their side? And three, how are you able to track it also in a visual format so that everybody understands is on the same page? And sometimes the daily stand-ups that I was mentioning for a Scrum has to be done for multiple geographies. So how is it done? So there is a lot of emphasis now on collaboration tools and the requirements. One other aspect when I talk about the full stack development, I forgot about the source code management. Git is one open source tool that is very popular, and so your students should definitely look into that. And then Apache on the web service side, and Ubuntu or one of those deployment operating systems, they should also be at least familiar with. I will not say expert in, but familiar of these aspects, I think definitely will help. And so the collaboration element of the development and testing is also very important. So there are multiple tools. Confluence is one, like a collection product. And Jira is one more tool which is used right from requirements through issues and project tracking. Now, Visual Studio Online has its own collaborative environment. ID itself, VSTS, allows for tracking the product end to end and doing demonstrations, and virtual demonstrations are possible. But the emphasis on collaboration and the tools that could help in collaboration is another area definitely your students should be well aware of. Okay. Some of it probably they are going to acquire as part of their job itself and in their initial training. But having this knowledge, having these skills, definitely is going to put them on a higher step when IT service organizations come for campus hiring, and probably could become a good point of advertisement from the colleges also to the IT service companies on what additional activities you are doing to prepare your students for the job. And so that could be a good motivation also for the IT service organizations and a good advertisement from your side to position your college to be in the first day of that service organization's drive. And again, this has been one question of how do teams recognize. And as I mentioned, it's not earlier waterfall we used to do a weekly kind of status review, but here in a Scrum world, daily is what it is done, and a person will know upfront. If the project is on schedule. Burn down chart is something that is used, a very simple visual mechanism to display where this requirement feature development is going on, whether it is on track or not. Very easy to understand. And different ceremonies, as I was mentioning again, ceremonies are very important place where right from the time the requirement is groomed and refined and then put into sprint backlog, and the sprint planning happens, and then the daily Scrum meetings, which are basically the stand-up meetings, the sprint review, wherein the developer, tester, and the business analyst will be demonstrating it to the business partners, and then your retrospectives where the learnings are happening, right? Yeah. So there is one question again. In Agile, how is the collaboration? Obviously, I think that the point is made that it is very important. But how do you ensure that this collaboration is, at least conducted in a global delivery, particularly where Americans are involved? Is a question. Yeah. So there are multiple ways. As I mentioned, one is the tool aspect. Tools aspect is one definitely, and second aspect is, typically what we do is in the development side, we front load most of the meetings for the morning half of US daylight time. Okay, so typically most of our conference calls with the US counterparts happen towards our evening time. That's close to about 5:30 onwards. 5:30 to 8:30 is going to be the most busy period in the life of any software employee working in an IT service organization, because that is the time they're going to get access to their customers. And we have worked with the teams over time, because when I started in 90s, we used to do night shift to actually collaborate with the customers who are sitting on the other side, and their days when we start sleeping. So we used to do a night shift. But nowadays, customers have also become more understanding, and they also understand that in the global delivery model, they will have to make some adjustments as well. So most of they have front-loaded most of the meetings towards the first half, and so from 5:30 to 8:30, most of the meetings with US counterparts happen. So that is where virtual interactions happen. It could be in the form of video conference calls, or it could be in the form of code walkthroughs done through an online system with an audio conference, or it could be sometimes just an audio conference call to get some clarifications for some of the questions. So, and 3 years, as I mentioned, the tools. Tools is one. So whatever I'm doing here is visible to the party on the other side using the collaborative IDE, and the walkthroughs can happen in that using either a video conference, or it could be, or in the majority of the cases, something like this Zoom, right? Or Link. Microsoft Link is very popular. Communicator is very popular. So we use that to do some kind of walkthroughs, screen share here the way I'm doing. But instead, be showing their screen, which is basically demonstrating them the working of that particular application. So that is how collaboration happens. And as I said, mostly, they are tuned to between 5:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. India time. It's the most busy time. But again, US geography as such is vast. And the East Coast and the Pacific on the West Coast, their time differential is almost more than 4 or 5 hours. And so as a result, the East Coast is what wakes up first for us. But if you are dealing with a customer who is in the Pacific, then they will not be coming to the office maybe until about 8:30 or 9 of India time, 9 p.m. India time. So in such cases, we may have to adjust our times. So it is not very uncommon to have people work in second shift sometimes. And definitely what we do in maintenance type of projects is wherein we are working on production support tickets. We usually operate in 3 shifts. So we may have, depending on the business support window that we have for that particular application, we may operate in multiple shifts. So that way, we are able to cater to their problems whenever they are occurring. That is how it is done in production support environment. But in the development side, most of the time, if we are able to group all our questions that we have in our daytime, and when we shoot them between the 5:30 to 9:30 p.m. our time, we should be getting the responses. And most of the times, US people are busy with their own conference calls with their Indian counterparts during that time. So they have done those adjustments. So collaboration happens through tool, through some of these mediums, etc. Okay, I hope I answered your question. So feel free, maybe if you still have any additional points, we can discuss it towards the end. Let me keep jumping around. And so the Scrum ceremonies is one of the important aspects. Learnings, and to share the learnings and to proliferate it to the teams is what is the intent here. And again, I cannot emphasize more on the communication aspects. Communication is on the expressing our point of view. And again, just for the lighter side, I just wanted to show you, this is what we used to call in our days. And the core roles in agile environment we used to treat, this is prior to 2010, right? We used to, in agile, we used to call the main roles that we have in a particular sprint of the product owner, the Scrum team. The Scrum team comprises of the developer, tester, and all the people who are responsible for the development. So these are the people that are responsible for actual delivery. So they are the ones who are accountable and responsible for the delivery. And then we have chickens. These are the people like your users, stakeholders, and managers. So on the lighter side, we used to refer to them as chickens, though people were not very happy, the sponsors were not very happy with this terminology. So at 2011, they were able to influence enough, and this terminology was removed, but this is how we were. And the reason why we used to say pigs and chickens is pigs are supposed to be the sacrificial ones, right? So when you take bacon or a ham, right? So in that particular dish, ham and eggs, so pigs contribute bacon, and chickens only contribute an egg. Chickens will not die because they are giving an egg, whereas the pig will be die. So that's the reason we used to call people who are actually accountable and doing the hard work and slogging as the pigs, and chickens are the ones who are mostly informed about the decisions, etc. But they are the ones who are supposed to be having all the dollars. Very important people. So after 2010, we dropped this terminology. It's just some history for you. And again, these are the different phases that we see in a sprint. Okay. And again, the core of uncertainty that I was talking about, this is more from, in a waterfall methodology, if you see where we are and with respect to agile, where we stand with respect to the variability. So the waterfall, the risk builds towards the end, as there is a possibility that it may not meet the requirements. So the variability aspect, in one case decreases and another case increases. So that is what the school of uncertainty is basically. So and again, in a waterfall, we have upfront estimates and planning, which is obviously going to change for about 4x, could be 4x variance could be there. So that means the initial planning activity and the estimates prepared would change so much, so it could be a waste of time and waste of money. But again, Agile doesn't mean that we are going to be going without a plan. Agile does have a plan, but it is a sprint plan. And the plan is going to be of a shorter duration so that you have more control on the outcome and the desired expectation. But now, as we said, when we are developing things in very small increments, one challenge that comes about is if I have a large system to develop, then to develop such a system is going to be a very cumbersome task, because I will have to integrate so many features, and some of these features may have their own dependencies. How do I ensure that these dependencies are taken care? And also I need to ensure that these dependencies are sequenced in such a fashion that I am able to first develop the dependent one before I develop the independent one. So all of this in a large program becomes very tough and difficult to handle. So there are newer concepts and frameworks that are available in the Agile world. One is this large-scale Scrum. Then there is the Scaled Agile framework, which is referred to as SAFe. So this is a very popular framework that is used currently for scaling Agile projects, especially for large programs. And this is one of the drawbacks that used to be there. Whenever we used to have projects in very large projects, we were always discouraging people, customers, from doing it in Agile because of this reason. But that drawback has also been addressed by this Scaled Agile framework kind of models and architecture is available now. And there are many Scrum Masters who are very Agile coaches also that are fully knowledgeable on this aspect. So now we have larger projects also beginning to embrace Agile. Now, given this, I hope I've made sufficient sense of why we are doing what we are doing, at least from an IT services organization standpoint. Now, I would like to know, are we done? No. What is the more? Now, the next phase of the transformation started.
Sai Garu, if I may interrupt here with a quick question. Can you maybe give us a quick overview of some of the tools that can help with, performing or implementing Scrum effectively?
Yeah. So I was kind of alluding to them during the course of my discussion. They talked about VSTS, right? VS Online, Visual Studio Online, and Spring. Eclipse also has its own online collaborative version available now. And Jira is one popular tool that is used for Confluence is one other product that is used again to work in an agile delivery mode. And there is end-to-end requirement connectivity from the requirements through the test cases is achieved, and also the status of the project, the status of the requirements and the features that are being developed, and the number of defects that are existing. Everything can be viewed in one tool. So these are some of the tools that typically are very popular. So on the .NET side, VSTS is one that is popular. Visual Studio tools are one. So, sorry, we've used it successfully for many agile projects. Okay. I hope that addresses Rajiv.
Yeah.
Or did you?
Yeah. Thank you.
Jira on the open source side, Jira is one of the popular tool. And now, again, one other aspect, it's good that you brought up this point, is what we are seeing generally a trend in the IT services space is at least until 2010, the customers were very reluctant to look at open source technologies, which they are open now. And because of the maturity that some of these technologies have evolved over time, the maturity that they've got into, and the popularity some of them have got. And second aspect is, customers in at least back until 2015, I would say, financial services and insurance customers, majority of the ones who are very heavily regulated, especially including the pharma, life sciences space, they were reluctant to look at cloud because of the security concerns. But we have now started seeing that the heavy demand also from all these areas. The result, the reason for that is because of improvements that have happened from a security service standpoint, and some of the features that are currently available, and different cloud models that have evolved, including hybrid ones wherein I can have a private version of a cloud versus a public cloud. So those are some newer things, trends also that we have started seeing in the IT services organizations and customer environments. But are we done with Agile? No. So what now is, things have worked fine in production, but when it went into the production environment, it is because of version control. It could be that the production systems are having a bad version, or in one particular region, in US context, I have to. It's possible that I may have 4 or 5 service centers or data centers where this particular application code has to be residing in. And it is possible that one of the service centers may have a wrong version, or could be have a bad image or something. And then the deployment that we make in that particular server fails. And then in production environment, it is not working. So this is one feature that we were seeing. And the major reason for that has been our typical culture, the way we have structured our development, our requirement process over the years. People have started constructing their own barriers in the form of walls, wherein initially the requirements used to be totally isolated, or the business team used to be isolated from IT services. So in the development side, but now that is integrated in the form of Agile. But then we have one is the change organization. Change is what is basically referred to as change organization. He is the one that is doing the development projects. Right? The projects and major enhancements are being done by the change organization. But once they are done with the development, then it is handed over to the run organization, which is doing the production support activity. Now, both of these are, we have constructed a wall between themselves. And as a result, what has happened is, it is possible that because of images, so that becomes an important skill that people may need to have, is on configuration management. This is an important skill that people need to have. Configuration management, SVN is one popular one. So Git could be one more. So the things that, as a result, what has happened is there is a vacuum in between these two groups, run and change organization. So the activity that is currently happening now is to integrate these run and change organizations, and to also industrialize a lot of manual processes that currently are happening in a manual fashion, especially testing activity, deployment, and release management. All of these are being integrated and industrialized, and the concept is being referred to as DevOps. That is basically development and operations. Operations is basically the run, production support. Both are converging now, and is referred to as DevOps. As a result, some of the newer technology and the full stack requirements that I was mentioning are also being driven from this particular requirement or need, because the organizations now have to have all the skills. So the person may be employed today. He may be working on a development feature, but tomorrow he may be expected to solve something in production. So he may have to have end-to-end skills. So all the more reason why a full stack developer is required. And two, there also the barrier of development, testing, and operations is ceasing to exist. And gradually, teams are we there? Not yet. Probably only about 10 to 20%, very 10 to 15% organizations have fully embraced DevOps. But the rest of the organizations are also falling one over the other in a fast track race to ensure that everybody moves into the DevOps side. In the DevOps, what happens is the testing gets automated. Whenever I deploy in increments, the testing automatically happens to ensure that the build is proper and the build is not really destroying or getting the system down. And the reliability of the system improves, the quality of the product improves, and the pace at which the product is delivered into the market improves. And then also, when it is moved into the production, there is no issue because all this team is integrated into one team and everything is happening in an automatic fashion. That is what is realized with the form of DevOps. And the organizations, some of the organizations, especially in the e-commerce space and some of the internet companies, Amazon, Google, Netflix, they have already, these are the ones who have been pioneering these technologies in the last 10 years. And currently, the deploy frequency, that is, they are able to deploy frequency, basically the number of changes they are able to implement into production environment currently is greater than 20,000 for in a day for Amazon. And Google is close to about 5,000 implementations in a day. And again, all of this requires people to test faster and people to develop faster. But in larger organizations, manufacturing or retail or could be banking, financial services, insurance, life sciences type of domains, those organizations are heavily regulated, and so change still takes time. But there is greater emphasis now on DevOps requirement. Almost is a given thing required by all the customers. So something that you should be preparing your teams to. So I think I've come to the end of this section. And only thing is, I've only briefly touched upon the aspect of DevOps here. And if any of you see a greater interest in that area, and I'm willing to do a session, Krishna could probably get a content expert to do a session on DevOps. So you also understand what are the tool sets within the DevOps cycle. There are things like Jenkins, Puppet, Chef, or Docker that can be deployed. So the new skill sets that people will have to also develop over their course. It's not that everything has to be developed by the software engineer before he joins the company. But to be aware and of these developments is very important. So I hope I did some level of justice to just bring that awareness to you so that you can impress upon the required skills with your teams. And with that, I pause and I'm open for any questions. I'm going to do an unmute of all the participants. So, it's open for questions. All of you are unmuted. So if you can mute yourself in case you are not asking a question, that will be great. At least you'll give an opportunity to whoever has a question to express themselves. I see some other people, Nirmala, Aditya. Anybody has any questions or it can only be two reasons if there are no questions. Either I have done a fantastic job or I put all bouncers and all of you to sleep.
No, don't worry, Sai. I think you've done a wonderful job. And this is Krishna again. This is the beginning of it. Any journey will be slightly, rocky in general. So, what we are looking at is as a company, we want to bring in, because the change is going to happen. Whether you want to do it, you don't want to do it, it doesn't matter, right? Like Sai was mentioning, big companies just vanished. I used to work for a company called Sun Microsystems, and just because of one, where they slacked for a year because they haven't moved into Linux. That could be one of the reasons the analysts were saying at the time. They just vanished. It used to be a $120 billion company and crashed in 3-4 years, just like that, like pack of cards. So they haven't taken care. You see, that a lot of companies which are coming, new age companies, they really move fast. They really move very fast, and that will affect the people, those who are going to take up the jobs, and including entry-level jobs. So my request is bring the digital culture, a learning culture, and you are the champions. People, those who are sitting here, I feel that you are the champions for your students, and you can't be ignoring, and we can't be ignoring, from the industry, uh, because no more is going to be training; it's going to be all skill development. So there won't be much difference between skill development and training, because training is vanished. Okay, because training is normally one way, and skill development is very, very interactive. So that's one. And so any help you need from these colleges, you feel free to come back to us. We can figure out how to totally bring in the change what industry is looking at, and then identify various layers where we need to put emphasis, so that they're ready for the change that is happening in recruiting industry, or the companies which are recruiting, they're gone digital, or they're going digital, a lot of companies. So they don't need you, in the sense they can meet, our students can go and meet them directly digitally. But are we preparing them? I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. And that's going to be a very important question, because I had seen the computerization, the revolution in 80s. People who haven't really taken care at the time just started vanishing. They were forced to look into some other opportunities. People who are average but still looked into the new age, the changes that are taking place, they flourished. So we need to be prepared for it, because the change is happening very fast, especially in India, because we are interlinked with the US companies. A lot of activities, they pass it on as quickly as possible for us. There are certain things which happen here compared to what happens in the Western countries or anywhere outside of India. So it's a great opportunity for students. It's a great opportunity, for all of us to bring the change, to embrace the change. And a couple of things which, in case you need a participation certificate for this, is a housekeeping thing. You please get in touch with Suresh. His mail ID is there in the brochure, so he'll just help you to get that one. And it's going to be most probably a digital one. And the other thing is, in case we want to conduct a student session, I want to form a small group out of these, the colleges who are participating. Is it possible to form a small core team where we work with you, and you help us what should be taught to the students like this in sessions? What do they need? Can we use the same session for students? I feel not possibly, because they're in a different mode altogether. Can we do something else, different sessions? That is something where we would like to get in touch with you. Proactively, if you want to reach out to us saying that you would like to be a part of the COPE team, just let us know. Again, Suresh can be a good contact point for that. And the only thing is, in your mail, put a subject saying that want to be part of the core team, to suggest some curriculum where we can have, stand-up sessions and all those things we can have, bring that little 2-hour session for students to help them as a starting point. So my request is help the students, because it's like a tsunami. It's happening. We have seen that. We have seen that way it's happening. So I think you are the champions. You are the torchbearers. You need to take it forward. Okay. So any last minute? Sorry.
Yeah, I see one question about myself. Probably I did not mention. I've got about 23 years of experience in the IT services industry. I worked for about 14 years with Satyam Computers, and then moved to Capgemini Services, which is a French-based company, France-based company. And my last designation has been a senior director at Capgemini. And currently, I'm basically a managed services, agile, machine learning, and blockchain consultant. So that's and I'm associated with Tooople for providing some expert sessions also on some of these later concepts. And if we can make a difference in the life of the student is what we aspire to prepare them better for the industry.
Rajiv, any last minute words to the participant? Rajiv?
Yeah, again, thanks everyone for joining. We hope to bring several such industry relevant and informative sessions to your in front of you, and we actively encourage your participation in the same. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and have lunch. We'll also rush for lunch. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And for
Thank you.
certificates, get in touch with Suresh.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah, bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.